I've got my ears and my eyes on that situation. You know, I've got briefly, I've got 5 kids that have shown up on my Newsbreak app within these past 3 or 4 months. So, uh, you know, kids that I've taught that are in trouble now, you know, serious trouble. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just glad to be here, and I appreciate Mr. Fuller being here. I appreciate you being here, Commissioner Mayor.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have we're going to save you last, Commissioner, if you don't mind.
It's okay.
But next we have Alan Walden.
Yeah, I'm Alan Walder. I only got a minute, Greg, because I told you I'm still at work.
Right, I
Okay.
understand.
But I want to participate in these type of form. I am a person in long-term recovery over 3 decades that's been laboring in our community as far as substance abuse and mental health. Okay. We're a grassroots organization that I've been with the Dayton Fellowship Club since its founding in 1990. We've never been funded by any government or any agency, right? So we've been in the community. And then now I am a advocate for the U.S. flip, which means we want to turn nonviolent drug offenders and mental health people and put it in the public health system and take it out of the criminal justice system. We know this worked because Portugal done it 20 years ago. Overdose rates around in their country, or the country of 10 million, only had 34 overdoses. So we know it worked. The state of Oregon already done it. This is a global movement. It's called, if anybody get a chance, the Global Recovery Movement. So it's people across our country trying to decriminalize addiction, what is happening. And it will help with economics and everything if we do this, you know. So I believe in, you know, the grassroots efforts, bottom up, not top down. I appreciate the commissioners showing up, but we want some efforts in the community because we've been talking about stuff for decades.
Right.
You know, I've been asking questions for decades, and it's the same thing getting spent. So we want some stuff that's going to help. We're willing to work. We ain't just willing to talk and be on Zoom, but we're willing to work to change our community. It will make it a better place for us and the future people who come behind us. So we have been out here working. We just have questions for our leaders after the elections. Okay, we done worked, and we worked to help get people in, no doubt. And now that they're in, we don't just want them to go and sit in the comfort of the office and chill, if I'll put it that way, okay, y'all? Because sometimes I'm just straight when I talk. When you meet me in person, you gonna know I want some straight talk so we can help you achieve, Commissioner, what you're trying to achieve for our city. All right, that's enough for me for now. But I told you, do these a little differently, Greg, and I don't want to be at work and then I can hang with you through the whole segment, okay? Because you know me, you know me well enough. I ain't
right.
Go through all that.
Don't worry, we'll be having our next one, and then we agree, and I think it was June, then we said, because we're trying to do this quarterly. So, you know,
that sounds good. Yeah, but I do appreciate the commissioner showing up. Okay, see, that shows me something.
Right
there off the top. You know, because a lot of time we don't want to talk to. Okay.
Well, we had at least 6-7 people commit. So, you know, him showing up right there shows his commitment to keeping his word and everything, and that means a lot to our community. I know that. All right,
yes,
next we have Waldo Littlejohn. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
How's everybody? Waldo Littlejohn, DFC, Dayton Fellowship Club trustee, community outreach representative, minister of Greater St. John Missionary Baptist Church. Just a concerned citizen. I got sort of dual citizenship in Dayton and Trotwood, so I'm on here to listen.
We forgive
ask questions, that is, as well. Doing Jeffrey. My brother from another mother.
Right.
Okay.
I thought you were gonna sing a little song, man, because
you know I will if you say so. Wait a minute. If you tell me you gonna run for the mayor of Dayton, Ohio, but we're gonna get into that later. Don't you know that?
Well, I think I was I told Greg at the time that I committed to do this, that this is my birthday. Yeah. And so
today, happy birthday.
So it's important enough for me to be here, man. I told brother, I said, you know what, brother asked me, and I know he's been a good brother, been out there trying to make some things happen for people. So I had no problem in taking time out for my birthday. I mean, I got a whole lot of time to celebrate. Okay.
All right.
So,
all right.
Brother, make a wish request. Then I'm gonna try to be here. So yeah, I am. My hat's already in the ring, brother. So that's a given there.
All
but I want to talk about certainly, Brother Lil John, you know me because we've been in the church, man, since we couldn't spell church. Okay. So and our mothers were like sisters, so like you said, that makes us brothers. So in the background, some of you may or may not know, I'm a Vietnam vet. Dayton Public Schools, Jefferson Township Schools, Central State, Wright State degrees. I was a teacher. My brother artist over there, Mr. Allen, not Allen, I'm sorry, Mr. Morris. In fact, I taught art in Dayton Public Schools for 11 years. And art, ceramics, and jewelry. So me and Bing Davis were very close. We did some team teaching and things of that nature. So we got that bond right there as well. And Brother Howard, of course, your brother Quinn has been heavily involved with me as we've done some things with Men of Color, starting back 6 years ago. And I've known him before then. I've known him for a long time. But when I was asked to address these issues with young men of color through President Obama's My Brothers Keepers Initiative. I pulled together a bunch of brothers who had some value and had some interest and some concern with working with young brothers. And your brother was one of those, and still is, because he still, of course, does some good things on behalf of young men. Been on the City Commission for almost 8 years now, in my second term. And prior to this, I was on the state school board. And prior to that, I was president of the Dayton School Board. And prior to that, I was director of government relations for Dayton Public Schools for 25 years. And I was a lobbyist for them, lobbyist for the Howard Education Association, president of the Teachers Union when I was there. So I've been blessed to have had a variety of experiences in terms of representing people. And it's just been a love of mine to try to create some conditions for all of us. In addition to that, I've mentored young Black men for about 44 years in the Jack and Jill Botellion Militaire, where we had high school seniors from area high schools in a mentoring program that I've been working with the Jack and Jill organization, which is the longest serving organization in Ohio to mentor Black males. So it's been a pleasure for me to be a part of that process.
Well, I think the last time that I saw you in person, you were a Dayton skyscraper a few years ago.
Yes, sir.
Francis Turner did a piece on you. Yes, because I belong to ABAC, the art group.
Okay.
And we were having a conversation, and I'll bring it up again, but Keith Harrison from Fazo and I, we would like to see Stone Street renamed to Land of Funk Way. And so that's something that I wanted to kind of put out there again. And I appreciate you. I've always found you, I've met you a couple of times. I've always found you very gracious and, very, giving of your time. So I appreciate that.
I appreciate that, man. Appreciate that a lot. Now, Keith is another one of my brothers because his older brother and I, Steve Harrison, played the drums as well. And we were co-captain of the American Legion Drum and Bugle Corps. We were in the band of Jefferson Township. And we won every talent contest in the Dayton area 3 times. So he comes from good stock, good musical stock, if you will, which gave him a good foundation for the kind of quality work that he has done in music and in this community as well.
Okay, we appreciate that, man. You know, so like, what this forum?
What's up, Jeff?
Hey, man, what's up, man? How you doing?
All right, brother. Hey, everybody.
Recognize that voice, man, before I saw you.
What's up,
Hey, man. He said, you guys on here tonight, man. Some good stuff, man. I'm just getting in. So, hey, man, y'all go ahead, man, and we'll catch up.
Okay, bro.
All right, then.
All right, we'll see you.
The way we envision these forums as they grow is like we as moderators, we'll have a series of questions for not just, you know, since you're the only one tonight, but you know, and we wanted this. Well, we're streaming live also on Facebook. So if anybody came in and they had any questions, I'm reading it. You know, if there's any comments that come in, we will have you know, the comments from the community also. So right now, you know, I'm going to go around and allow each one of the gentlemen on here for any of the questions that you might have had for our guests. Go ahead and let's go ahead and get to it so that we don't waste our time and their time. And hopefully that we'll get some more people in. And I'll still keep looking for the comments to see if there's anything that our community would like to ask our guests. Edwin, if you want to go ahead and start off. Put you right on the spot.
I know you did that. All right. Well, I really I do appreciate these forums and these conversations. You know, Commissioner Mims, I think first time I met you was a couple of years ago. You came and spoke at a Get Out the Vote rally that we were having at Grace United Methodist. At that point in time, we were supporting issue 1. And I remember you speaking, and I appreciated your words and what the work I have seen you do. And therefore, I mean, I know you have a deep interest in, I think, an issue that really impacts our community. And that is, you know, obviously my bailiwick is dealing with criminal justice related issues. Frequently, our criminal justice related issues are not strictly related to letters of the law and the system, but they are really related and rooted in our communities and our community's relationship with, I guess, for lack of a better word, I guess I would say stakeholders, system stakeholders. So I guess my first question is, and I probably will have a series of, you know, as we go around here, but my first question is, what in your estimation is the number one or is the most pressing issue facing communication between our communities, and by that I mean everyday run-of-the-mill people who inhabit our communities, and established stakeholders in government? And I couch that that question in terms of what is going on in the national conversation. We had a national conversation that's dealing with a number of pressing issues. Obviously, you know, we know what's going on with COVID and what's happening in our government, but it has opened a door once again to the pressing need for conversation and communication between institutional stakeholders and the community. So again, what in your estimation is the most pressing issue in regards to that communication?
You know, first of all, thank you for the question, and thank you also for the work that you do. I was going to sort of bring this up somewhere near the end, but you hit a real hard question from the very beginning. So I'm going to reference a report that I have not finished reading yet, but it's a report from Citibank, and it's probably maybe about 6 weeks, maybe 6 or 7 weeks old. And I will send you the link to that later on after we get off the show. But it was done also with the foreword from one of the leading black brothers who was on Wall Street, Ray McGuire. Mm-hmm. And they talk about the loss of the gross national product and productivity because of racism. And the primary victims, of course, have been black males. And they talk also about some of the issues dealing with the criminal justice system in terms of so many of the laws that are in place that makes it difficult for a black man to move about his daily functions and to be able to escape the incarceration processes, even when they do something that's on a very, very minor basis. And in relationship to that, one of the things that we're doing here in Dayton in reference to the use of force issues, which is the committee that I chair or co-chair along with State Representative Willis Blackshear Jr., is looking at the different types of use of force that's being used by the police and what type of recommendations do we need to make to increase the level of trust and interaction between the police and the regular everyday citizens, and in particular those black males who seem to fall victim more so than anyone else. Communication and the ability to escalate or de-escalate these situations is something that we have found to be very, very critical and far too often missing in those type of interactions. Mm-hmm. When you start from the very beginning, we understand that both the citizen and the police officer want to go home at the end of the day unharmed, certainly in a situation not in a body bag or anything of that nature. And even if they are guilty of some violation, that situation should not give the police officer the authority to be the judge, jury, and executioner. And far too often, too many of these things are happening, not in Dayton, of course, but happening across the nation. And we're involved in doing some of the things that we're doing to make sure, to the best of our ability, that those things do not happen in Dayton. So I also talk maybe around your question or maybe to it to a certain degree, but I still think, and clarify that if I missed something, I still think the primary issue is communication, is trust, and is respect for the individuals on either side of the spectrum. And if I need to be more clear, I can certainly try to do so.
Well, let me follow up. Well, I appreciate your response and kind of where you went with that. Let me unpack a little bit of that. And okay. We were talking about, particularly you were referencing issues of affecting law enforcement, use of force and those types of things. And one of the things that we have found or that we're seeing across the country, and I'm sure, Ohio and Dayton is probably a microcosm of that, mm-hmm. is that frequently when we talk about communication, whether it is in the aftermath of an incident or even in the aftermath of the aftermath, which is, well, where do we go from here? Those communications frequently take the form of institutional stakeholders flooding the zone with, here's what we're doing and what training we have and this and that. And it floods the zone with, here's what we've done, we're on top of it, don't worry about it. And what ends up happening is that the community doesn't, there's a lack of opportunity for real communication, exchange of not just ideas, but exchange, mm-hmm. what I guess I would refer to as really taking the temperature of what the community feels the real issue is here. And this, I've got another question going to leave, they'll follow up on this later on. There's a couple things I really want to ask you about. But I think that's where we've seen a lot of these communications flooding the zone with what they're doing or what they have. It's almost in some ways a defensive measure. But what do you see as a way that we here in Dayton can avoid that? How can we have real authentic communication with our community members, especially with those who have a lived experience through the system, mm-hmm. and so that we can really have a healthy understanding of this is what is really affecting the relationship between law enforcement and our community. So does that give you a little bit idea where I'm trying to go with that?
Yes, and I think I answered part of that. And let me go a little bit further with that. When I mentioned what we're doing with the police reform committees that we do have, that is directly related to some of the kind of things that happened, of course, with George Floyd and some things that have been happening across the nation. The issue of trust, as we have interviewed and talked with the community members who are part of the 5 different groups that we have dealing with police reform, is a major, major issue. That am I in a position where I trust that I'm going to be treated fairly when I get stopped for a traffic ticket? Am I in a position of feeling that I'm going to be treated properly, and can I trust the situation even if I do go to court? I go through the legal system. Are the officers and or officials, be it judges or whomever the case may be, am I going to be treated in a fair manner based upon evidence, based upon past history? Am I going to be given the same level of respect that any other person who may not be in my pigment, in my skin, would be treated for the same set of circumstances? And I think when we get down to it, as we talk to almost every one of the members who are part of our reform group, and we have 5 different groups with some 21 people on each particular group, and they're not all people who just agree with the police and who just agree with management or just agree with the city structure. There are people that we purposely put on these committees who have been very critical of the police and are very critical of the city, because we want to have real answers and not just answers to just go through the process. So that's one of the things that we're doing. And I could say maybe it's probably overdue. It's something that probably should have been done years ago, or probably something that could be done on a yearly basis. Because even as we look at some of the kind of recommendations that we're getting right now, we're making recommendations about training situations so that citizens and police will know their rights. What happens when you stop? What can the police do? What do you have to answer when the policeman asks you, a police person asks you a question? Making sure to the best of our ability that we expand those opportunities for people to know their rights. We're also working on additional training processes so the officers that we do have better or more advanced training in how to de-escalate a situation as opposed to escalating a situation. And we've seen across the nation that far too often escalating a situation is almost a given when someone is stopped, even from a minor perspective or a minor incident.
Okay. We had a couple questions come in from some of the citizens that are on our page right now. One of the questions was, ask the commissioner what he would do about the highlighting redlining in the Black community. How would you address that for a change?
Well, that's something that we're consistently trying to work on through the banking institution, because we know far too often that that makes it difficult for primarily people of color, more so even than people who are just poor. That those type of situations have been happening across the nation for quite a while. One of the job functions that I had with Dayton Public Schools for a period of some 25 plus years was to be the compliance officer. And part of the training processes for certification that we had to go through on a yearly basis, we found that there was a lot of information, because it's not just pertaining to education, but there's a lot of information that we found that for the average person of color, in order for them to buy a home or a major purchase, we found that 75% of them who qualified for prime interest rate homes did not receive prime interest rate loans. Mm-hmm. And we also found that 75% of the Caucasian population who did not qualify for prime interest rates loans continue to get prime interest rate loans. Those figures were bad then, and they're still bad now, because the banking institution, which is under a lot of pressure from right now the Biden administration, just like they were under the Obama administration, because those laws that allow them to continue to do that are set at a national level. And so we can put pressure on our local banks and choose which bank we go to that's going to give us the best set of experiences. In a lot of cases, it may wind up being your local credit union as opposed to your bank. And so we're asking people to do research as they do what they do, while those that they elect in various positions continue to fight that battle to minimize the type of redlining that's being done. And when we are aware of some of those things, where they're making local decisions about that, then we again can continue to put enough pressure on them that they will hopefully make some adjustments and communication at their higher levels. But the key thing for them is still profit. The key thing for them is still profit. And they sit just like almost any other organization to find out what can they do to increase the profit for their organization. And they have these things called products, okay? Their products are insufficient fund fees that continue to grow, and insufficient check fund fees are those things that affect poor people and people of color more so than they do anyone else. So they'll find ways where those things maybe used to be, I don't know, I'm gonna go back maybe 20 years and say they used to be maybe $10. Then it used to be 20, there was 24, and now it used to be like 36. I mean, I don't know what it is now. Fortunately, I've not found myself in that situation, but it just exacerbates the problem when individuals find themselves in those situations. But the banking institution, and I know they're putting some people, and I forget who President Biden has put over working with the banking institutions, but those are key things that they're trying to address to minimize the redlining situations for us.
Before I go to any more of the questions that the citizens are asking, if anybody on our any of our moderators have anything that they want to ask, go ahead and jump in, and then we'll have you guys ask one question, then I'll go back to one of the ones that the citizens have, or I can go to the ones that the citizens have. It's up to you guys how you guys want to go with this.
Well, I actually have a question for Commissioner Mims and Mr. Fuller. I wanted to ask Commissioner Mims, I was having a conversation with one of my art group members before I got on this forum. And one of the things that came up was we were talking about the term defund the police, which I believe got taken totally out of context, but I wanted to see where you stood on that. And then I wanted to ask Mr. Fuller about the term restorative justice, because she also asked me about what did I think the definition of that was. And I was like, well, I'm going to be on the forum, so maybe I'll have someone that I could ask that question to, because I didn't, I know I could ask my brother, but I said I would ask somebody on the forum. So,
okay, I'd almost like to switch questions because that restorative practice piece, I've been a part of dealing with that for decades. I find out that when young people, and even those of us who are older, when we have the tools and the skills to minimize conflict at its lowest level, then it uses less time associated with those type of things, and then more time in terms of positive issues. And I found myself having been involved, and again, as a former teacher, teaching students those type of skills the first 2 weeks of all my classes. And as a result of that, for the 10.5 years that I was a teacher, including the 7 years in high school, I had one fight in 10.5 years because we created this whole family atmosphere and gave all the students a strong sense of value, if you will, to help them understand that they had much more in common with their fellow student than they did that they didn't agree on. Now that was an easy question to answer, but let me take the hard one too. Okay, I think like you said correctly, that way too many people misunderstood, and some of them purposely, what defund the police meant. And we have those individuals who just want to create chaos and divisions between all of us who are trying to make good things happen as far as our community is concerned. The phrase is just a antagonistic phrase that I think is misplaced. When you look at the amount of money and time that we spend for police and safety factors, police, fire, those type of situations, they are valued functions in any community. And those communities that are most thriving all have strong safety forces. Now, when we look at defunding in that, using that phraseology, it means taking some money away from something. No one seems to have a problem with defunding education.
Right.
And they do that all the time, and they don't raise that issue at all. Exactly. But if you were, for example, some of the functions that police are involved in could be placed in more of a social work type of function. We've had in past years, these McGruff things, had the big dog in a costume that went around the community and did things with kids.
Crime dog.
Sheriff Department.
The money,
mm-hmm.
The money that funded that McGruff could easily have been put in another category, and you still could have McGruff, and that would have been called defunding of police. Okay, the money where you have police officers that would go into schools and play basketball and football, not football, but kickball and softball with members of the community or students in school. If you want to use that negative phrase, that could be called defunding police if you take that money and put it in that particular camp. Conflict mediation programs. One of the things they did when we had this New Futures Project working with young people, we gave the student and the parent an option of when they did something wrong, as opposed to them being suspended, we called this Evening Institute, and where they had to stay after school for 3 hours. 1 hour was spent with mediation of schoolwork. Another hour was spent what we call community service, where they work with the custodian to clean up around the building inside and out. And then the other hours was spent in conflict mediation training. So if you, again, that was done by the police. So again, the time that they spent doing that, you could take that money and say, that's defunding the police. So the people who are using that phrase on a positive basis did not mean stop funding the police, but it meant look at some of the other kind of things that could be done either by police or someone else.
Okay. We have a couple good questions that are coming in from our community. One of them is, as laws change, how do you guys go about keeping the public informed of the new rights and new policy changes?
Well, that's a challenging one for all of us. We have our Community Police Council that has been a vital organization within the city of Dayton to have those kind of meetings and then share information about what's happening as far as the city is concerned. One of the things that we're doing right now with this whole reform process is to tighten up on how we communicate with police about laws. And like I was saying, the one area about know your rights is one of the key areas. Another one of the areas that we're focusing on is how do you make sure that individuals who, for example, are stopped for any particular reason or come in contact with police, that they do know, as I mentioned earlier before, they know what they're supposed to do and what rights they have and what the police is supposed to have. We also have these sessions with our police when they give reports to the city. Those things are open to the public and they're televised in our various sessions and our work sessions that we call. And we do those sessions with each one of our departments within the city of Dayton. And if you have missed those, you can call the city, 333-3636, and you can get that kind of information that is readily available for those who may want to take a look at those things and then communicate them to a broader audience themselves. We're right now, because of this recent law that was passed on Stand Your Ground, which is very troubling, because some of you who may be aware of that situation, because they have some of these situations across the nation where individuals, if they feel threatened, they have the right to shoot someone, even if that person may be moving away from them. And we see way too much of that. And there's a lot of education that needs to be done with regards to that. And there was someone I was in conversation with just today, and so many conversations. I was in the car and we were talking about how we have to, especially those of us who know people who may be victimized the most, how we have to be involved in doing the best job we can of training and informing some of our young people and those of us who are not young, again, what those laws are and what those rights are and what to be on the lookout for, so they don't fall victim to those type of situations and those laws.
Okay.
Greg,
go ahead.
If you don't mind, real quick, I just wanted to ask Mr. Ford a question, because I wanted to get his take. I got Commissioner Mills' take on it. I wanted to get your take on that, on the restorative justice definition.
Sure, I'll jump into that water, and I appreciate the question because it was leading to something I wanted to ask the commissioner. So, Commissioner, you get a break for a second while I warm up. While I do the warm up act on this.
Commissioner.
But you know, when we talk about restorative justice, that term by itself is, I think, like one that is not dissimilar from the question of defunding, from the term defund the police, and that many times people hear restorative justice, oh, soft on crime, we want to everybody to forgive each other and go home and just kind of forget the whole thing happened. Yeah. And that's not at all what it is. And I really appreciate this question because, you know, my organization, Building Freedom Ohio, we're working with the Dayton Collaboratory around this whole question of reimagining America, reimagining Dayton. And one of the components of it that has really started to gain some interest and enthusiasm is that whole issue of restorative justice. But when we talk about that, we're talking about not just a particular program or a mechanism. When we're using that term, we're talking about a restorative community justice. You know, in our case, where everyone in Dayton is, when you have a restorative justice community, everyone in Dayton, residents will hopefully feel that they're really part of a community that values the existence and the participation of everyone in our community. Everyone who is, that everyone has a place in our community, especially for those who are returned citizens, who are trying to build a new life and return to families, and they are a valued part. So as I say, you know, the restorative justice terminology encompasses a lot of areas. The commissioner referred to it. You know, some of the aspects are being done in schools, some are being done in some other mediations. One of the more well-known application is in a criminal justice aspect, where restorative justice is an option. It is a detention diversion avenue that can meet the needs of both the victim and the perpetrator. Okay, because many times the victim doesn't want the perpetrator to go, you know, to end up, you know, they'd be satisfied with an alternative resolution, and that getting someone into the system is not necessarily the desired outcome or even the best outcome, but there is an outcome that can involve the community in embracing and seeking out a solution where everyone's need is met. It's not, is a restorative justice option the only way to go in every situation? Certainly not. But it is a community approach, and so that's kind of, and it's a lot deeper than that. But you know, we do have a working group that is doing something. We're hoping to develop something on this, and later on I can talk to you a little bit more about that, what we're doing with that. But Commissioner, my question for you in regards to that is, when we talk about restorative justice, and one of the things I mentioned was as a detention diversion avenue, and this kind of steers down the lane of talking about what is going on with the Montgomery County Jail. And I don't want to get onto the jail right now, but my question for you is in regards to Dayton being a restorative community where alternatives, because I know you've mentioned a lot of things. They're talking about, the issues we're dealing with use of force by the police, or and other related issues, even just with community monitoring, whether we're talking about, was it a shot spotter, and those type of things, speaks to almost a confrontational relationship between law enforcement and community, which leads in many ways to this whole issue of trust and communication between institutional stakeholders and communities. So what do you see as the challenge for Dayton? And well, let me ask you this: do you see Dayton as being a restorative-oriented community? If so, what makes it that? And if there is a growth edge, what do you see as the #1 challenge for us to really move our community into being restorative? And by that, I mean alternatives to entering people into a system that is going to follow them the rest of their lives.
Very, very heavy and loaded question. Okay, one of the things that we have done for quite a while is to have a mediation center, and that mediation center, staffed by professionals and of course funded and paid for by the city, has taken on the role to address a lot of the confrontations that citizens have, even though it may be sometimes a next door neighbor, even though it may be something that could be resolved just by personal conversations and conflict with those individuals. Sometimes there are larger groups that they meet with to sit down and try to find a common ground, because as was mentioned before, every time there is a conflict, that conflict doesn't have to go to the highest level that causes someone to get any type of a criminal record and things of that nature. We have also found that Montgomery County, and I don't have all the details, but we do have some judges there, Helen Wallace and Jessica Pizzi, who have worked in the juvenile court area with young people to find ways to, again, minimize the penalties, if you will, from some of the kinds of things that they would do that would lead to some of the higher level offenses. And it's a set of circumstances that we don't have all the answers to. What I do know is that we do have groups and organizations, again, from the city and from the county, that are working to minimize some of the kind of things that you're talking about in terms of effects, and trying to put some things in place that will minimize these circumstances that you're talking about. One of the things that we have tried to do, and you hear me often refer to some things in terms of education, because not just because of being a former educator or a person that says, well, once an educator, always an educator. When more and more people have those skills on either side, it puts them in a better position to resolve those conflicts at a lower and lower level, which then puts the city in a better position to not have these things dominate opportunities for people to get a record. Yeah. Now, is there a perfect mix? I'm sure there isn't in terms of where we are. It's certainly something to continue from my perspective, because I've always had good results in doing those things. So it's certainly something that I think that any city, especially those urban communities where those incidents are probably the highest, should put a lot more time and resources into developing things of that nature. I think those things are optimal.
Do you feel like the city of Dayton has an aggressive attitude as far concerning alternatives to the status quo system? You know, we talk about people, you know, you're right, we don't want people to enter into the system at all, because that falls, especially our youth. And we're talking about that, a young person, when you're young and not so wise, and you are behaving in a young and not so wise way, can put you in a position where, yeah, you have something that's going to close doors to you long before you even walk on the block. So my question is, do you feel that Dayton has an aggressive attitude towards creating alternatives to satisfy the needs of public safety and security, yet also finding what are opportunities that we as a community can embrace to prevent people from getting into the system that doesn't lead to us needing a jail with more beds?
Right, exactly. I mean, no, respectfully, yeah, I attempted to answer that. I hope I did, to say, yes, I think we have that that attitude to aggressively work at that. And I tried to give a couple of examples in terms of things that we've done. And again, I'll say that police reform group that we're working with is a major piece in looking at those type of things. And also the aspect of how we choose and how we select and how we market to get additional police officers and how we train police officers, so that we, again, try to get some of these things on the front end, as opposed to dealing with the activities and consequences on the back end.
I know Alan had his hand raised. You had a question for him, Alan?
Yeah, I've ridden with the police. I'm a certified peer supporter, so I've ridden with the police. This is about the defund the police, and went and talked to people who had overdose on drugs and try to get them treatment instead of, lock them up. Because now the system is lock them up. In Ohio, I don't know, y'all, I can't remember, I think in 10 years where they said either get a people, non-violent offenders, treatment instead of jail. And Ohio said, excuse my language, hell no. Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's less. Now this is 10 years ago, Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
I've been hearing you say it's committees, it's this. Whose are these people for one thing? And defund the police need to be defined as far as taking resources where somebody can go and the police won't be killing them. Whether it's substance abuse, whether it's mental health, because some people getting killed in the mental health. Now this is overwhelmed because I've talked with the sheriff, I've been in focus group, Adams board, I've been doing this for a while. So we talk about it a lot, but what is the plan to where they understand we're talking about if a police officer go out there and don't know that this person has a mental health problem or a drug addiction, this is a public health emergency. It's been one, but let's be frank, Commissioner, since the body's been turning, not dark-skinned bodies. And look, I talk directly when I talk about this stuff. Because now all of a sudden it's an epidemic. It's been an epidemic, So I've been dealing with it 30. And when I grew up, it was just really just to have fun, but it became like my man. I had my youth was reckless. But when I got to a point, it was a good thing that it was some type of help there. And when the help became available, then I haven't, in 30 years, I've been in the community trying to do better. So it does work, and it's a model for it, but what are we doing? What I'm trying to say, not to make this just from talk, that we actually, where the police can see that the community work and the community see that the police, because I've worked with some good officers, they can't tell me that it ain't some officers tired of this, because they are. Yeah. But it's looked like the people at the top, we got to understand what are they doing to make sure that you change the culture, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to change the culture because this is embedded in our culture. It ain't just in Dayton, it's across this country. And we need to, but when we say defund, we need to explain this is what we mean when we say that, y'all. Then you helping the police as well because you're taking some of that pressure of them that they go into a situation. I'm not saying some people, you know, if you done it, I was doing something, you need to be locked up. But killed, you know, don't you know that, you know, and this is where we're at as far as, like you said, that law they just passed about to, you know, you can shoot. Come on now, what is that saying to people? What is that saying to people when you're supposed to be protecting and serving us? And I'm telling you, I still today, and I've been trying to follow the rules as best I can, Commissioner, and I still turn my head when the police get behind me. Oh man, is they going? And I know I ain't done nothing.
Yeah. Well, you know,
that's trauma, ain't it, Commissioner?
Man, I'm gonna tell you.
Ride while black.
Yeah.
Breathing.
Hey, Alan, in my previous, I was in my previous life. I had sports cars, and I thought it was my job to see how fast I could go from one traffic light to the other, and see how quickly I could get to Columbus or back from Columbus to Dayton or Cincinnati. And I got a variety of tickets. And even like you said, when we're doing the right thing, and police officers come up and they stop you, and you got to go through those interactions and whatnot with them. And you see different type of policemen in terms of how they respond to you when they're giving you a ticket. I had a highway patrolman give me a ticket one time, and he was so polite that I had to catch myself and not say thank you after he gave me this ticket. I had been racing. I had a Porsche. I was racing a guy in a Firebird in a Corvette, and I won the race. I had this radar detector in my car that told me to slow down because it was what they call the bear in the sky, and so I slowed down. And as I slowed down, the other two cars passed me. I got up about a mile up the road. He had them pulled over. And so then he waved me over as well. And a part of his conversation was, you and the Firebird and that Corvette were racing. And since you won the race, I'm going to give you a ticket first. And then he went on to talk about other kinds of things and stuff, asked about my family and, what about doing, anyway. And I had to catch myself to not say thank you for that $75 ticket at the time. But the point that you raised, Alan, again, and I hope I answered part of that, and I would just sort of add to that again. We are doing a lot with these reform recommendations, and a lot of that information is going to come out here in the next month or so or less, because we've been working on this for, guys, probably since early fall, late summer. And I know a lot of us are excited about some of the recommendations that have been made. And we're going to communicate that to the public as a whole. And we are also putting ourselves in positions so we can modify some of these recommendations, get money to put some things in place to implement some of the things that we're dealing with. And it's unfortunate that we can't change everything overnight. I am happy to have been a part of a rally that was sponsored by I think some of the churches. I remember Bishop Cox, and there were some other individuals who had sponsored a rally downtown outside the federal building, where they invited the mayor, myself, I know Commissioner Shaw, and I think Joseph were there. And I was honored that they thought enough of us to be working together with them to invite us and to also encourage us to say a word or two about what we're trying to do. We had a little bit of a march to emphasize some of the kind of things that were discussed. Unfortunately, the march sort of got out of hand later on in the course of the day, and that caused us to look at some other things that we need to do to put this whole process together with these reform committees. So this is the outgrowth of the things, Alan, that you were talking about that have been going on, not just in Dayton, but across the nation in a whole lot of different areas. And our response is to get as much information as we can from the community to get a set of recommendations that we think from the community's perspective responds to the challenges that we have in terms of police and community relations.
Okay, right quick, because my phone getting ready to go and I gotta go. How do we access that information, Commissioner?
Well, it's gonna be out very soon. Greg said in this regards to our committee, this is not the last time that we're going to be meeting.
Right.
And so we'll have additional times where we will share that information and you will be able to see that. If you're watching some of our commission meetings, we will occasionally pass some of the recommendations that have been made.
Right.
You know, like body cameras, we did that. Things of that nature. So,
that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Greg, I gotta go, but you'll hear from me again, Commissioner.
I hope so. And thank you again.
Okay, and I appreciate your time, okay?
No problem.
Hey, thanks a lot, Alan. Speaking of body cameras, that's one of the questions that are on our list that we have, but I want to get to this question before you go ahead, Morris. This is from somebody who's visited our city, and they had this question, and it's very good. He said, I understand the issues that we have as a people with the disrespect that we get from the police, etc. I've been to Dayton a few times, and I'm sure Dayton was a thriving city at one time, but this is 2021. What are you guys doing for the community as far as jobs, community centers, and having members having seats at the table with those who are making decisions for the community with, that represents us?
A lot. Okay, there's data clearly indicates over the last several years prior to this whole issue with the visit from the Klan, the tornado, the shooting in the Oregon district, the pandemic that we're dealing with right now, we were on a very strong upward trend. We had reflected the largest, fastest job growth in the region, which a lot of times people seem not to understand that. We passed the first tax increase in 34 years in 2013 to get new dollars to address some of the conditions that we have in Dayton. With those dollars, we increased the cutting of grass in vacant lots and thoroughfares, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a major issue if you're living close to those places.
Yeah, but
we've increased the number of police officers that we have by 20. We've also increased the number of EMS services because going through that serious situation with the opioid crisis. So that was to help that area. We've done a lot to increase and support our recreational facilities that we have in the city of Dayton. We also involved with those dollars in fixing all the roads in Dayton over the next 8 to 9 years. And we have put more than $6-7 million a year into helping the school system by creating these 5-star preschool programs and supporting them so that when our 3- and 4-year-old students go to kindergarten or first grade in Dayton Public Schools, they have a better chance of being successful. And the reason why we've done those things is because it's not the, quote, public school system's responsibility to educate children who are 3 and 4 years old. But if you don't help them with a better start, you're asking them, because most of them come to school 3 years behind in their developmental skills before they get to kindergarten. So you're asking them to be at the 4th grade level 4 years later, when in fact they were 3 years behind. So you're asking them to master 7 years of learning in 4 years, which is virtually impossible under the set of circumstances that we're dealing with. So in order for us to have a better educated community to address the myriad of issues that we're discussing right now, we felt it was our responsibility as a community to put those young people in a better position to be educated once they moved into the school system. Because unfortunately, they come in behind, and then 5 minutes after they're in the classroom, they're blaming the teacher, the school board, and the principal because of the kids' status. So those are some of the kind of things that we're doing with regards to those issues.
All right, Morris, I know you had a question.
Yes, Commissioner, if you can, if you can speak on this at this time, if this is something that you can speak on now, or it'll be something that you might have to speak on later. But
right.
One of my questions is that I would like for instance, there's been a lot of discussion, especially after George Floyd, about more community panels, like people in the community being able to weigh in on what a particular officer's situation might be, instead of them being protected by the police union and being dealt with internally. It's like, I'm gonna, let the police police the police. And I'm just wondering, are there any avenues for more community involvement, for, like, say for instance, that an officer can just leave Montgomery County and then go to Greene County and get hired, after, committing some horrible offense, but not being found, guilty through the legal system, but maybe civically responsible, as far as in which the city would have to pay, or the county. And I was just wondering how much involvement would be would citizenry be allowed, to participate in that?
Well, we do have a citizens review board that generally addresses issues on the back end of some things that have happened. And they have a lot of information there. Again, we're looking at how that can be modified to make sure that we're responding to the needs of the citizens as well as we're going through this process. And like I said, and I'm putting a lot right now on you by saying, here's what we're in the process of doing. And I take some pride in that, because to my knowledge, it has not been done before. So I'm really happy to be a part of this commission to do something that is bold, and again, way overdue. I'm going to admit to that, way overdue. I'm just glad that we thought enough of the citizens of Dayton to do that right now, based upon these circumstances. I know part of our outgrowth or response to some things that have happened in previous years was to have some of these things to be put in place with the community police council. And so we're looking now at how, and if that needs to be modified to a particular degree to make sure that we're in a position to respond to these things on a better basis. Because the goal is to improve. There's probably no way to fix every single problem that we have to address these issues, but our goal is to improve to the best of our ability and to continue to listen and be responsive to those on both ends. Those who we give the responsibility of keeping peace and helping the citizen, and those who may find themselves in a situation where they need help from the police. So again, great question, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Before another one of our panel members asks a question, let's go back to another one. I want to try to get as many of these questions from our citizens that have been chiming in. One of the next questions that was on, and it seems to keep falling into what we're talking about, police, defunding the police reform and everything. The question was asked, Commissioner Mills, how does the city go about vetting the police department to weed out the white supremacist officers that do exist around here?
Well, it's not an issue in terms of whether we say we have those individuals who are part of that organization, but more so they had those psychological processes that they go through for hiring that is designed to not only weed out those individuals who would be a part of these white supremacy organizations, but individuals who just would not be a good fit, period. And regardless of whether they're male, female, or black or white, that's the whole design of the process. And one of the things, again, that I mentioned in terms of the recruiting and training process, we're asked, just like our citizens ask, just like members of these panels and these reform groups are asking, how can we do a better job of recruiting more and more police officers who are reflective of the community and who have a sensitivity to protect the citizens, so that our citizens in our community feel just like the citizens in Centerville, Oakwood, and Kettering, that their police are there to protect them. It's way too often, like Alan was saying earlier, that even though he wasn't doing anything wrong, just when the police came up in his vicinity, he felt he needed to be on his P's and Q's. Okay, when we look at other communities, sometimes based upon their experiences, they don't feel that. In fact, they feel more emboldened or safer because that policeman may be in their vicinity, as opposed to what some of our citizens may feel, all based upon the experiences that they've had. So our charge, as far as leaders in Dayton and the members of these respective communities or committees, is for our citizens to have that same level of trust and confidence when they're in the presence of the police as they would have in some of the more affluent communities.
Okay. Any of you guys got another question for him before I go to these? I got three more questions that were asked. So, you know, I want to try to keep the rotation going. One from the community, one from you guys. If not, I'll go with the ones from the community. I see everyone's mic came on, so go ahead.
Commissioner, I got a question for you. I know we've been talking about the police reform committee. I know that, and I know that you have recommendations coming out. Let me ask this: what provisions have been made, or once those are? And I know I can't remember how long they've been in existence, but once they release their findings, what oversight protection has been created or designed so that we can keep up? I mean, so obviously if they make recommendations, who's going to oversee it to make sure that they're implemented? If they're not working, how are we going to make changes? And how is that going to be communicated with the public, or, you know, as opposed to like the group that's on the committee?
Yeah, great question. And we've also thought about that, because some of the committees are going to be asked to stay somewhat intact. We also are discussing whether or not we will have, like we've had, I don't know if you want to call it maybe a super group, where we have some members of each group that meet to talk about some of the redundancy that we may have in some of the recommendations, because there's a natural sometimes overlap with some of the committees in terms of their charge and the recommendations that they may have in place. I know, like, one of the things that we talked about that you heard me say earlier was the committee that has, for example, Know Your Rights. While that's in my committee that deals with use of force, we may also have that. I think it also spills over into the training and recruitment committee in terms of some of the kind of things that they want to do. So again, that group is one that is going to take a look at whether or not we should stay intact on some of these things. And we're also looking at whether or not we need to modify, or how we should modify, the current community police council. So you will continuously have those things that are in place, and we'll be consistently communicating all those issues. And I will say to you again, just remind you, 333-3636, any questions that you have regarding what we're doing in terms of communicating to the community about some of the respective things that we're doing, that you can call that number and you can get a response. You will get a response. Let me say you will get a response. And so you'll know what's going on from that perspective. And again, be aware of the fact that we have the city commission meetings that are weekly. And those meetings are also available for you to look at. And if you missed the meeting, they're on our website, www.daytonohio.gov, and they're also on YouTube. So there are multiple ways for you to continue to stay engaged, to stay involved in terms of what's happening. The police, not the police, but the newspaper is doing a decent job in communicating some of the kind of things that have been happening. I know I was on one of the channels, I think maybe channel 22 earlier this week, to give some updates, some response to some of the things that we're doing with regards to buying the body cameras. And so there's always methods of communication that we're using to keep the community involved. But if you look at, again, YouTube, you look at the website, you have that number to call, you can always get information.
before we get out, I know we still got enough time and we got a couple questions left anyway, but city commission meetings have not been in person lately since the pandemic started.
COVID, correct.
Right. Would you go ahead and tell the community if they would still like to be at the community at city commission meetings, what Wednesdays are in the morning and which Wednesdays are in the evening, and how they can go about doing it without trying to catch them on YouTube, but like if they would like to participate in person as much as possible?
Well, Greg, sometimes I get those mixed up myself. So, I mean, especially since we've been doing these things by Zoom.
I know y'all probably miss my face down there because Zoom, I can't keep up with what time and all that, can't find the code. So y'all miss my face down there.
Right. Yeah. But I was sitting in my office at home, 8:30 one morning. Well, actually at 8:15 and then 8:30 and 8:45. I said, "Damn, so what's up? I'm trying to get to this meeting." And so, damn, because every one of those months where we have 5 Wednesdays in a month or something along those lines, there is a different change in terms of what we do in terms of meetings. So we may have 2 meetings in a row that may be evening or maybe morning meetings. So we had a morning meeting today. Okay, so they generally alternate, and next week will be an evening meeting. And again, that information is always available as well. It's generally on TV, in newspaper, and our website. That website is always 24/7, and so that information you can get anytime in terms of when we're going to have those meetings. And we have to do a notice generally 48 hours in advance to the community as a whole, so that always goes out in time to let people know when we are going to be meeting.
Okay. One of the questions that was asked by our citizens was, with so many job losses in the area, what is the city going to do about the new companies that have been started as a result of the pandemic with pre-existing disadvantages like felonies and people with bad credit or low credit or low capital?
Look, Greg, first of all, I'll say that I just want to go back and mention that prior to this whole pandemic and these crises that we had, we were leading the region in job growth. I said that earlier, so I don't want that to be forgotten. The aspect of us losing jobs is something that is nationwide, because this whole situation has been mishandled by our national leadership, and fighting to get more and more dollars from the CARES Act, and you've seen individuals who argue about whether or not you should get more money here, or whether you should get $1,200 or $2,000 or $600, $300 or nothing. And a lot of those individuals who are having those discussions are very comfortable on the money that we send to pay their salaries and their fringe benefits and their housing and things of that nature. And it hurts. It hurts a lot when we see way too many of our people who are suffering through no fault of their own because this whole situation has just been mishandled. Listening to a report today that has shown that women are really hurting as a result of these type of activities and lack of response on the national basis. The question or the challenges with regards to the deficit has been totally absent during these last 4 years about the deficit and how much money the federal government is spending, except for when it comes to giving money to the people who are most in need. Then you have legislators talking about, well, we got to balance the budget, and we don't want to have this blow, increase the deficit and things of that nature. And all we can do in so many of these cases is to take those dollars that we get and apply them to the best of our ability to spread out to those individuals who are most in need. And I would tell you, it's just not enough. Not enough for Dayton, not enough for Columbus, not enough for Cincinnati, not enough for Centerville, Oakwood Academy as well. But for those who are already hurting, this just makes it worse. It just makes it worse. So you have a lot of those individuals who have child care responsibility, they have jobs. They're having to stay home because kids are at home doing online education. And you can't leave sometimes young school-age children at home alone. And so you wind up not going to your job. You can't take care of all the things you're responsible for taking care of if you're fearful of catching the virus by going to work. Because for a long time, you know just as well as I do, the federal government had so much misinformation out, and we had a lot of essential workers. And I call essential workers those who are working at the gas station, the grocery stores, and all those other kind of places where we have to go to get some of our basic things. They were without the proper equipment to keep themselves safe or to keep anyone else safe. So, I mean, I appreciate that question, but it's not an easy question to answer, just like I'm sure it wasn't an easy question to ask, because we have so many of our friends and associates who are affected by what's going on.
Another one of the questions that was asked by the community was like, red light cameras that are right now. I know I'm guilty because I just had to send you guys some money from right there in front of Roosevelt. But and also on the east side of Dayton, is the money being raised from that? That's what's funding the body cams?
Yes, a portion of that is going in that camp. Some of you may remember the lawsuits that have started maybe six or 7 years ago that we had with the state legislature with regards to a couple of different things that they did. Okay, there is sometimes this punitive mentality that affects urban communities. We lost $12 million through our local government fund for no reason. No reason at all. And then that $12 million that we've lost over the last 7 to 8 years has gone to municipalities and townships. In addition, the $5 million that we were getting from the red light cameras, the state legislature ruled that to be something that we couldn't do. We have gone to court on several occasions to find out that we can do that because we proved that those red light cameras saves lives. And that's our primary responsibility, is to keep our citizens safe. So then after the court ruled in our favor on that, the legislature filed another complaint or another issue, passed another law rather, to take whatever money we got from the red light cameras and take that out of our budget allotment that we were getting from the state, again, to put us back at that particular point of, again, not having those dollars to spend in the way we felt we need to spend it to take care of our city. So we go back to court again. And so then we get another modified version of that allows us to still take those dollars, because we ruled, or it was found that we still had the responsibility to keep our citizens safe, to minimize speeding and accidents and deaths, to take those dollars now. And the compromise was that those dollars that we get from the red light cameras would go directly into safety forces, be it body cams or dash cams or whatever else we felt necessary, specifically in the camp of keeping people safe. So that's where we are with regards to that. And I had to say, Greg, my household has also contributed to paying for those body cams and dash cams as well.
Right. We have one more question, then I'm going to open it back up to the panel because I want to get our citizens. They've been. I like to thank you ones who participated and have been asking questions. These have been some very good questions, and I thank you again, Commissioner Mills, because like I said, we invited a lot of people, and 6 or 7 people are committed, and you came, so you had to end up brunting the burden of it all. But it was just meant to be that way, What a hell of a birthday gift, Yeah,
that's how we were gonna say that, yo. Because my dinner my dinner is past ready. So
right. Waldo going to sing for you before we get out of here. But one of the last questions that our community activists and participants asked was like institutions more like mental health crisis interventions at the schools to deal with adverse childhood trauma, with the public safety and community policing, reentry programs, de-escalations. Are there any city dollars that are available for help funding these things? And if there are, how do the community go about accessing these funds?
Well, first of all those things are extremely expensive and necessary.
Yeah, I know.
We have seen a reduction in terms of state and federal money going into those areas. One more notable of those reductions has been the mental health centers. The mental health centers across this state that have closed, and you have left those individuals in a greater element of risk, because mental illness is a natural phenomenon. And when you don't address those situations, those circumstances, it only gets worse. It doesn't go away, it just only gets worse. And they will find themselves in some other area. And we've talked about the types of mental health, and I'm not a mental health expert in terms of that by any stretch of the imagination, but we see people doing things that are unnatural. We see people that can't hold a job. We see people that don't know how to handle some of their flare-ups, and they treat their loved ones in an inappropriate manner. We see those individuals who also do crude, harsh things to themselves because they don't have the skills to address those issues in a manner that should be addressed. That's a really big void that we have, not just across Ohio, not just in urban centers, not just in rural centers, but also in suburbia. But when you have those situations in suburbia or more affluent communities, they have the resources to go to different places to address those issues. Those who are in rural and or urban communities don't have the access that they or the opportunities that they have to address those concerns. So I know our Adams board with the county, I mean, and again, I'm not an expert in terms of that, although I am on the Human Services Levy Board that helps provide some of the resources that we have to address those concerns. But what we have and what we have seen rather is an increase over the years in those areas beyond the amount of money that we have to address all those concerns. So the answer to those problems, like the answer to a lot of the problems, is how do you address your legislators at your state level and at your national level? And how do you say to us, even at the local level, understand the challenges that we have, and then join us as we talk to legislators at the higher levels to make sure that we have support and dollars to address these concerns. Because again, going back to what I said at an earlier point in time in our discussion, the report that was done by Citibank that talks about the loss of the gross national product in this nation because of failure to address these issues that are primarily based on race, but areas of jobs, healthcare, education, and the criminal justice system exacerbates those problems that we experience.
Yeah, I know there's a report that I've been reading, a book, matter of fact, that I've been reading, the Black Tax, where basically talks about, our country as a whole misses out like almost, because we make up like a $1.3 trillion in Black community in revenue. Mm-hmm. And just because of the racism in America, how much of that, I can't remember the exact amount that he said at the time, but America as a whole, because of racism and everything, mm-hmm. we're missing a big portion that could be going into the gross product, and everything like that. again, man, I thank you for coming. Now, I know if there's any more questions that the panel might have for you, if not, we're going to try to let you get up out of here because it's your birthday. And anything else for the commissioner on the panel?
Well, I just want to thank Commissioner Mims also for being here and taking the time out. My birthday was last Friday, so.
Okay, all right.
All these Aquarius is right.
You're Aquarius too, dog. Okay.
But I wanted to thank you also for bringing up the pandemic and touching a little bit on the pandemic assistance situation, which is PUA, and because I've been diagnosed with COVID, I've had 2 positive COVID tests, and so as a matter of fact, I went today to Hometown Urgent Care, and they recommended that I not get a test because when I first was positive, briefly, when I was first tested positive in October, they said it could last as long as 3 months. And so now when I went today, they're saying it can last as long as 4 months. It could be in your system that long. And so that has not, well, with the facilities, because, working in juvenile facilities, with them shutting down, some of them, which, took some of my income. And then with me getting sick myself, which, put me in that position. So I appreciated your attention to that, to that situation about the assistance. But like I said, I want to thank you again, for taking the time, to come out. I won't forget you,
Okay. Yeah. Appreciate you.
One last question that just came. So it says, so is there any money for the nonprofit organizations in our community that the city has?
Well, we've taken almost a 20% cut in our revenue because of the pandemic. Because again, we're looking at the income tax dollars and tax monies that we get from the businesses and corporations that are in the city of Dayton. So when those businesses are closed, they're not generating revenue. They're also not generating revenue for us as well. They're not generating tax dollars. So those cuts that we've had to make are sometimes similar to the cuts that those companies have had to make. We can't afford to close. That doesn't happen for us. So we have been in a situation where we have had layoffs past the extent of what we can afford to have in order to take care of some of the vital and basic services that the city is supposed to provide for its citizens. So the extra dollars in so many of these cases don't necessarily come from us in the first place. Some of them come from grant dollars that we get from the state and federal government, and they are not doing their part in addressing this issue as well.
Well, I thought I was gone, but you mentioned Citibank, and I wanted to touch on that, and I kind of slipped my mind, Commissioner, so okay. On that. But you mentioned Citibank, so it was nice to hear that they're doing something positive. But I was looking on the list of all these businesses that got PPP, and I noticed that in quite a few of them, PNC Bank was like an intermediary. I don't know a lot about financial institutions and things like that, and and how things go. But that, that didn't sit well with me because you're talking about at least $20 million that went to these companies that, I didn't see any Black businesses on there, not in the top 20 anyway. And so, I just
that distribution, again, going back to the beginning of that distribution was very misguided. But it was not a surprise that it was misguided. The issue, almost sometimes when it seems like, we've heard these terms before, the trickle-down effect, where you give the larger corporations money, and then they'll take that money and they will trickle it down. But by the time it gets trickled down to the people who need it the most, there's nothing there. And some of the companies, in fact, have taken those breaks, those dollars that they were receiving by virtue of tax breaks, and reinvested in their own stock or reinvested in the stock of some of their friends and associates. So they've got more and more wealthy. And there's data out, and I don't have that right now, where a lot of the major corporations, a lot of people who are already doing extremely well, they've gotten more wealthy during this whole time frame, while those of us who are in the middle and sometimes below have gotten worse off as a result of that.
I'm not going to let you get out of here without me asking some of my questions that I need to ask. I've been, you know, when we moderating and doing.
And we'll cover mine the next go round, but go ahead.
Yeah, because I was saying you've been extremely quiet, Lil John, and that's not
right.
I'm going to that's not like you or anybody in your family. But go ahead.
I'm going to let you get yours next round, though. But I need to ask because
they're brief.
Some of my union brothers and sisters would not let me off the chain if I did not ask this. We finally got before the pandemic, we finally got the county to the table to do a PLA, you know, a test point with them. You know, what is the chances of labor?
You do a what? I'm sorry.
A project labor agreement.
Okay.
You know, we're doing a test one with them whenever we can, you know, because we had to put it on hold because, you know, there's no new construction or stuff going on right now. Like you said, 20% of the budget is being cut and all of that in different areas. What is the chances of labor getting a project labor agreement with the city of Dayton? You know, any projects over a certain dollar amount would have to go underneath a project labor agreement, saying that, you know, what that means for people who don't understand that. That means that, you know, whether the company is union or non-union, they will have to pay union wages as well as union fringes, like what we just did at the Gem City Market.
Well, you know, first of all, I'd say that we have been extremely union friendly, the city of Dayton. And that's been reflected in so much of what we've done in the past. As a former union leader myself, it's always been incumbent upon me to make sure that we are as fair as we can. A fellow classmate of mine, well, he graduated a year before me, the late Dean Lovelace, was instrumental in pushing for a lot of things in terms of prevailing wage that had a major impact on this community. He was probably the first person that began to talk about the issues dealing with, and the words escaping me right now, but the issues dealing with the predatory lending, those type of situations that were happening in terms of banks, you know, with these balloon rates and high interest rates and things of that nature. And we have just continued to evolve in a positive direction relative to those kinds of things and the agreements that we do have with labor. And which is one of the reasons why you will find that even in our negotiations with them, we open up the book so everyone knows what we have in terms of dollars, and everyone knows what we're trying to do to continue to move in that direction. We have made a real strong effort. I know the last 7 to 8 years to have an internal and external customer service type responsibility where we're working with our employees, because we find that when our employees are feeling at least satisfied and the understanding that we're doing the best we can with them, then they in turn do the best they can with our external customers. So that has paid off for us, you know, on both ways, coming and going. The growth that we've had through the local minority and women-owned businesses has been another area that has helped us continue to move to keep those dollars that we spend on these different projects in our community, so that those dollars continue to circulate in Dayton, as opposed to outside the state or outside of our respective communities. So while we're not perfect in any of these circumstances, I can just continue to speak to the growth that we've made and the progress that we've made in all these respective areas, and know that, and let you know there's still work to do.
Right, and I will be getting in touch with you guys. You know that.
Okay. Okay.
You had a question.
Look forward to it.
You've touched on pretty much all the topics I had listed: housing justice, economic justice, education funding. So, you know, we'll pick them up and we'll ride with them the next forum. I like this forum. We're going to be regulars on here. So, you know, I'm just going to hang in here, keep listening, and roll my sleeves up, Jeffrey. And you have a happy birthday.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Edwin, you have any other questions or anything before we close?
Oh, I think that's enough grilling for one night. Commissioner, there's a lot more I want to talk about. I got a lot of questions.
I can't get it all.
Well, you know, we don't have to wait till 6 months, you know, because
no, we're doing this every three. We're doing this
every know all the time that I'm available almost any time, and we can go somewhere, break up some chicken wings or something, and sit down and talk and respond to some of the concerns and questions that you have, and go from there. So certainly don't let this that you think. I don't want you to think that this is the only forum that we can have a conversation.
Great.
No, definitely. I do appreciate your candor, and I'll be taking up on that. The wing.
Okay. All right.
I'm there.
Okay.
Morris, is there anything?
No, I think I wore the commissioner out today. I'm let him get out of here so he can get his dinner. I appreciate your candor as well. I mean, I have to, ditto Mr. Fuller there. That it was very gracious of you to come, Commissioner. I really mean that. So.
Okay. All right.
And like I said,
appreciate you both. Yes.
Right. And like I say, I appreciate you coming out. Like I said, we put this invitation out. We've been planning this before the election, and we put the word out and we had people commit, and you're the one who showed up. So that shows, for our community, that shows who really is caring about giving back and talking to us. You know what I'm saying? So we appreciate this, Commissioner Mims. Our next one, like we're doing this once a quarter. And I think our next one was slated for either May or June, but you'll get the word when the days. We're going to get together this Saturday and get all of our days together. That way, there's no excuses for anybody. Because I know when I was running for office, when I took a commitment, didn't nobody have to call me and remind me, because when I say I was going to come and talk to you and everything, it was in my calendar. Just like how I didn't have to call you and remind you, and I appreciate you. So there's no excuses. I'm talking. They know who I'm talking to right now, because this is this forum is put together for our community, so that we can get to know our politicians and our elected officials a lot better, and our community leaders. And that way, our community leaders, politicians, and elected officials can get to know what we want to know as our concerns. So I'd like to thank all of the citizens who took time today and asked some real good questions. Those are real good questions. And we will be doing this every quarter. And hopefully we'll get the word out, get more participation. And again, Commissioner Mims, we thank you for coming out. And good luck with your race, coming up and everything like that. You never know. In 2 more years, I decided to sit my cycle out to make sure I got Felons with a Future running up good and everything. Never know, in 2 more years, I might be sitting in that chair. If you're the mayor, I might be sitting in that empty seat that you're leaving vacant, as that commissioner. So we never know.
All right. Okay. Appreciate that. Hey, one other thing too that I would ask of you guys as well is, of course, that I do a lot of work with young Black males through the My Brother's Keeper, the Males of Color program with Dayton Public Schools, and Men of Color program with the city. And there are certainly occasions to have speakers such as yourself and in front of those young people, so they can grill you about questions and things of that nature, about how they can put themselves in the best position to be effective, to be like yourselves, to be leaders, to be those who are giving information and interacting in society on a more positive basis. So I'll make sure, Greg, I can reach out to you from time to time and make sure Dr. Worley, who works with the Males of Color in Dayton Public Schools, myself, to get with you guys and create some of these sessions with some of our young people.
Absolutely.
And a lot of those things we're able to do
Count on.
Virtually right now, certainly because of the pandemic. So that would be beneficial for us.
No problem. You know how to get in touch with me.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
With that being said, again, the Dayton Fellowship Club, we'd like to thank you. Ohio organization and collab, Project Freedom. Edwin, we'd like to thank you. Morris, we'd like to thank you. I know Alan had to take off. I would like to thank him. We also like to thank our other partner, Sean Curley. He couldn't be here tonight. He's the new executive director from Wesley Center. He's going through some stuff right now, but we'd like to also thank our other partner, Dayton, Wesley Center, Dayton, and everything for helping us put this forum on. We're looking forward to doing more of this. So if you have questions that you would like to, contribute for our next session, you can email us at blackcommunityblackboard@gmail.com or felonswithafuture@gmail.com. Edwin, if you don't mind putting out your email address so that if they have any questions that they might want to ask towards you or anything like that, please go ahead and give us your email real quick.
Sure. My email, well, I guess I can't post in the chat, but my email, I can be reached at just a real simple, edwin@ohorganizing.org. And you can also find us on Facebook, either the Ohio Organizing Collaborative or Building Freedom Ohio. Both of us, we have pages for both of those on Facebook, and the Ohio Organizing Collaborative also has a website, ohorganizing.org. There we go.
All right. Waldo, go ahead and get it, man. Give the commissioner his birthday song so we can get out of here.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Jeffrey.
All right, brother, man. Appreciate you, man.
All right. Y'all have a good night.
And tell your mother I said hello, too, man.
Will do, man. You give the family my regards as well. Thank you, man. Will do.
Have a good night. Stay safe out there, y'all.
Well, yes, great, man. I'm getting better, man.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Better.
Okay.